Thank you, Cheryl. I really appreciate you and all you do, and particularly working with us to put on this exciting lecture series. And I want to thank the faculty that are here as part of our panel today. Students, if you're a little cold on your first question or two, we've got panelists to help us do that. We have John McIntosh and Timothy Dunn from our faculty here. And then we have our guest speaker that I want to provide a lot more information about. And I want to say that in previous editions of the Entrepreneur Connect lecture series, we have really started with entrepreneurs that have started something from scratch, a real startup. And today we're taking a little different approach of an entrepreneur who tells a story not only of a series of entrepreneurs that he and his team would build from, but turning around a company that has become a remarkable company, a company that ends up being the second largest grocery chain in the United States today and the third largest private company in America. But let me tell you more about Andy Scoggin. Andrew J. Scoggin is a founding member of the Albertsons LLC management team. He and his 7 management partners founded Albertsons LLC in 2006 with private equity backing to acquire and turn around a portion of the struggling Albertsons Incorporated grocery chain. After successfully turning around the performance of the original Albertsons stores, which they acquired, Mr. Scoggin and his partners, through acquisition and organic growth, grew their initial business from a regional chain with $4 billion in annual sales to the second largest nationwide traditional grocery chain and the third largest private company in the United States with over $63 billion in annual sales. Mr. Scoggin is a member of the executive team of the company with responsibility across numerous functions of the enterprise. Prior to the founding of Albertsons LLC, Mr. Scoggin spent 13 years in various increasing roles of responsibility to the former Albertsons Incorporated supermarket chain. He began his career as a lawyer with the San Francisco Bay Area law firm. He's also an active investor, and I would tell you more about that, but you'll benefit more from listening to him than to myself. But I do want to touch on a few other things. He is committed to helping drive continual improvement in the educational system of the state of Idaho. To that end, he is chairman of the Idaho Business for Education Association, a statewide business association with over 230 businesses across the entire state. Additionally, in 2016, Governor Butch Otter appointed Mr. Scoggin to a 5-year term as one of the 8 members of the Idaho State Board of Education. In that role, he also serves as a trustee of the Board of Trustees of Boise State University, Idaho State University, and Lewis and Clark College, and serves as a regent on the Board of Regents of the University of Idaho. And now the really important information. Mr. Scoggin and his wife, Elizabeth, have been married 35 years. They have 4 children and 5 grandchildren, all of whom are grateful to call Boise home. And in fact, their youngest son, Christian, is in his first year here at Boise State University. So let me introduce Andy Scoggin. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you. So it is a real honor to be able to come and speak in a university, especially Boise State University. What's impressive for me as I look around this room also, I see a lot of people more towards the back, but throughout this room who are not current university students, but are people who have inspired me throughout my career and have started some incredible organizations and built them and CEO'd them that are here, so you ought to get to know them as well. We live in a great community of here in Boise. I grew up in the East Coast. I went to high school in New Jersey. I didn't even know Boise, Idaho existed. I started my career in California, in San Francisco at a Bay Area law firm. Got recruited over to Boise, Idaho, and found out that there's no place like here. And I'm going to tell you some stories about Idaho that are going to even impress you more about what has happened here by Idaho natives or people who moved here who believed that they could do things that maybe no one else thought they could do, and on their shoulders we've all grown. That video, all of these slides that we have, I don't put them together. I don't know how to do all that, so I want to thank my friend Andrew Whalen over here. He's one of our talented team over at Albertsons, and he helped put this together and source some of these pictures. And this picture is a really cool picture because this is a bunch of Idahoans. And these are the Skaggs brothers. So if you turn around and look up here, this is the Skaggs Hall of Learning. And these are the 6 Skaggs brothers. And the Skaggs, their parents moved to American Falls, Idaho. Anybody from American Falls, Idaho? And here we had 3 people from the last group that were from American Falls, Idaho, Little American Falls, Idaho. That's where the Skaggs brothers were. Their parents moved there. The dad was a preacher. He had a big family, 6 boys, 3 girls. He had to feed them, or they had to feed them, the parents did, and that was expensive. So he figured out that if he could buy case lots of food at wholesale prices off the train cars at the siding that was there in American Falls, Idaho, and feed his family and then sell what was left over to his neighbors, then he'd make a little money and he could buy his food at a discounted price. So he built a little shed and he stored the food in there, and they took the food to feed the family, and he sold the rest, and that was a little grocery store. And that was in 1915. Number 3 son, Marion, who is right here, they all went by initials. He was MB. And MB, when he turned 26, I think, bought that little store from his dad. Kind of thought that would be his crowning achievement in his career. He'd been working in some oil fields and doing some other stuff, and he wanted to come home and run this little store. He did so well that he started growing that little store in American Falls, Idaho, into a chain of stores around the state of Idaho, then around the West. And eventually, over the next 10 years, he met up with a guy by the name of Charles Merrill. Today, there's a very famous stock brokerage firm called Merrill Lynch. Charles Merrill, founder of Merrill Lynch. M.B. Skaggs, founder of Safeway, joined up. Charles Merrill became CEO, MB was president and operator, and they formed the company Safeway. So the little company, or the big company Safeway, started in the little town of American Falls, Idaho, with MB Skaggs. That's really important to my story, even though I didn't come along for a lot more years past 1915, because they started that little company, and as that company grew, they started hiring people that MB and the people underneath him, as he grew into hundreds and then thousands of people, thought could, be entrepreneurial minded, could run a business, they could give them a store, they could grow that. And one of the people that they recruited was a college student at College of Idaho in the 1930s, and his name was Joe Albertson. So they'd grown Safeway. Safeway, started with these little storefronts, a few hundred square feet, to maybe 1,000 or 2,000 square feet, and then they recruit Joe. Now he's just one of their hundreds and hundreds of employees, but he does really well. In fact, he does so well that while he's still going to college, they make him a department manager, and then they say, if you'll come join us, we'll make you a store director. This was in the late 30s, and in the late 30s, there was a really significant worldwide phenomenon going on. Anybody know what that is from your economic history class? The Great Depression, exactly. So you can leave college and go be a store director and provide for your young wife that you've just married and, figure life out. You do it. He did it. He did that, and he did so well that they made him a district manager. Now, MB's younger brother, of those brothers, MB's younger brother, LS right here, young guy looking down at the ground, MB sent him to Salt Lake to be a regional manager for the Safeway company in the 30s, and he's the one that I believe, we think, hired Joe. Is just one of the many people, or had somebody who hired him. Anyway, he promotes him to a district manager. So now a district manager oversees usually 10 to 15 stores. So that's Joe Albertson's now doing that, and Joe has a drive, and he says to himself, I could do this myself, I think. Now this is 1938 to 1939 that he says, I want to open a store. The average size grocery store in the 1920s and 30s is about 2,000 square feet. So the store on Broadway here, that's the closest Albertson store to you, is about 60,000 square feet. The average grocery store in the United States was 2,000. A&P, who some of you may have heard of in the East Coast, it was the largest chain in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. It had 10,000 grocery stores, but they're all like 800 to 1,200 square feet, little stores. Joe says, I'm not only going to open my own grocery store, I'm going to open a 10,000 square foot grocery store when the average grocery store is only 2,000 square feet. Because the average grocery store was selling canned goods and things that didn't have to be refrigerated, etc. Joe opens a store and says, you're no longer going to have to go to the bakery to get your bread and the butcher to get your meat, the dairy to get your milk, and then come up to us for the canned goods and your flour, bags of flour and whatnot. I'm going to put everything under that roof, including he put a ice cream, he'd scoop ice cream himself, and he called them Big Joe's, and you could buy your ice cream scoops there. And so Joe Albertson says, not only does he want to do something in 1939 that no one in the right mind would do, which is start a business, he wants to completely innovate the entire industry. And some other people around the country have tried this as well, but he had his own ideas. He had one big problem in the middle of the Depression, earning a couple $100 a month as a district manager, a few $100. He needed $15,000 to open that store, to build the store, to put all of the inventory into it. What we now takes us $4 to $5 million, he needed $15,000 to do. But that $15,000 might as well have been $5 million or $100 million. But he believed in it so much, he went out and he recruited the money. He went to his boss, L.S. Skaggs, MB's little brother, and MB, even though he's working for the competitor, puts $5,000 in because he's seen something in Joe Albertson that he believes in. His accountant, LS's accountant, Tom Cuthbert, says, I'll throw in $5,000. Now we got 10. All he needs is $5,000 more. Joe and his wife, Catherine, go to Catherine's aunt, and she gives them the other $5,000, and they all take stock in the company. That first store, which opens on 16th and State, so whoever voted for that got it correctly. We still have a store there. It's not the original, but we still have a store there. But he opened that store July of 1939. Grand opening. He does so well with this new concept that within 3 years he's built stores in Napa, he's built stores in Caldwell, he's built stores in Spokane, and other stores. He's growing this company, and he can't keep up with the demand, and he believes in himself so much, again, a trait of a true entrepreneur, that he goes to his two partners, Cuthbert and L.S. Skaggs, and says, I'll buy you out for 10 times your investment, 50 grand each. And they take it. So now, instead of owning a third of the company, which upon his death was worth $3 billion, his share. So if they'd held on to theirs, they wouldn't have just gotten $50,000 each. They would have owned, at that time, $1 billion each worth of value. But he believed in himself more than they did. He bought them back, he built the company, and he just kept growing like wildfire. So by 1959, he takes the company public. And on the New York Stock Exchange, and through the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, this company is growing like no other company in retail. Well, There may have been others, but as good as any other company in retail. 1988, the Wall Street Journal says Albertsons stock is the best buy in the universe. This company's done phenomenally well over, from the time that Joe started in 39. But what happens with so many companies when they do incredibly well for a long time, in this case, the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, for 27 years, they had increasing sales and profits every single year for 27 years. That burden, when you're public on a company, becomes very heavy. And the management team is trying to meet Wall Street's expectations, and the more they try to meet those, the more that they slide a little bit off of meeting customer expectations. Didn't do anything wrong, great management team, but really big challenges for them to manage both those sides. And at the very same time they're doing all that, in the 1980s, and then into the early 90s, and then to the mid-90s, Walmart decides, we're going to sell groceries. So they've never sold groceries. And everybody in the grocery industry is laughing because they don't know how to transport lettuce. They know how to transport bicycles. So we figure, they'll flash in the pan and they'll leave us alone. They don't leave us alone. Mm-hmm. By the way, the number one seller of groceries in the United States today is Walmart. Sells more than anybody else. The reason Walmart sells groceries, by the way, is not because they want to sell groceries. It's because people were only going to Walmart once or twice a month to get their toasters and their dog food. But people buy groceries every week. And so if we can sell groceries, Walmart says cheap, then we're going to get people in our stores, and while they're there, they're going to buy tires, or they're going to buy blue jeans or whatever. So they had a scheme. Unfortunately, they came right at the grocery industry at the same time that another little tiny player called Costco combined with another little tiny player called Priceco and created a West Coast chain that all of a sudden started to gain some momentum. Well, what do those two chains have in common? Huge volume. So now the mid-sized players, including Albertsons in the 1990s, are saying, how do we keep up with volume? Because all of you that are studying economics know, and business know, that the more volume you can purchase, the lower your purchase price. So now Walmart's out there changing the whole game, and if you can buy for less, you can sell for less, and then your prices go down. And so Albertsons and Kroger and a lot of other companies are starting to have a little panic attack about what do we do. Well, Albertsons board's thought on this process was, we got to get bigger. How do we get bigger? Well, we've got to combine with another company. Well, let's go back to L.S. Skaggs for a minute. L.S. Skaggs got $50,000 out of his $5,000 investment. Now, interesting about those brothers, by the way. So LJ forms a company called Payless Drugstore. Some of you have heard of Payless. Payless is one of the largest drugstore chains in the United States. So not only do you have MB starting Safeway, but LJ is starting and grows Payless Drugs. And at the same time, LL goes to the Midwest, and brother LL starts a little company that becomes Owner's Service Company, now known as Osco Drug. Jewel Osco is the largest food and drug chain in the Midwest and based out of Chicago. So LJ, LL, MB, LS, these brothers, OP also starts a big company. They all are genius business people out of Little America Falls, Idaho. So good things come out of Idaho. And but LS, let's go back to him. He got his $50,000. He took and he bought 4 of his brother's Payless stores in northern Utah because he married a woman out of Utah. And so Ogden, Logan, Salt Lake, and one other little city up in northern Utah. And so he's got 4 drugstores. He grows it to 9 drugstores. He's 54 years old, and he passes away. He's got a son, 26 years old when he passes away. His name is Sam Skaggs. Sam Skaggs is who this hall is named after. Sam takes those 9 drugstores at age 26 and grows them into a nationwide food and drug chain called American Stores. Now, there is no American Store, so you wouldn't have heard of that, but he acquired through those 9 stores. He ended up acquiring Lucky Stores, food stores in California, Alpha Beta stores. He acquired Jewel Osco, including his uncle's Osco drugstores back in the Midwest. He acquired Acme on the East Coast, a chain that in New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania that goes back to the early 1900s. He acquires all of these chains and he builds one of the largest drugstore chains over 40 years of his business life in the United States. And along about this time is when Albertsons is saying, how do we get bigger? And ends up in secret talks with several different chains, and the one that proves to be the most positive is in this, even those of you who know the Albertsons American Stores story, which is that so there's some Albertsons. Albertsons merges with American Stores. So LS, who co-founds Albertsons, and LS, who founds American Stores and sends it on to his son. His founder, two of the companies he was involved in founding come together in 1998, really 99 is when it completes. And so we've got this, massive couple of stores, store chains that come together. The third, and these three companies, so it's Albertsons, American Stores, and the third one that meets back in New York in secret talks and almost pulled out one day before the merger was announced, was Kmart. So it was almost Albertsons, Kmart, and American Stores that joined together in 1999. Kmart pulls out the last day. Whew, thank goodness. And so you got Albertsons, American Stores that come together, forming one of the largest grocery chains in the United States, all in the family, interestingly. The problem with that is that bad mergers can wreck good companies. And Albertsons had a very specific way of going to market. American Stores had a very specific way of everything from accounting to distribution and logistics to marketing, high-low, promotional versus everyday low price, all of the ideas you had. And the people that put this merger together had a great plan for how to financially put the deal together. The strategy for running the business once it was put together was not nearly as solid, unfortunately. And I was there. I was down low in the company, Albertsons Inc. at the time. We come in at 1993. This is 1999, so 6 years later. But I got to watch a lot of this interaction. And what we had was really two different camps in our executive offices with two different plans. And they were both trying to execute on those plans at cross purposes for several years. And eventually the board said, we are going to go outside and bring in a CEO that doesn't have a foot in either one of these camps. And so they went outside and found the world's worst CEO and brought him in to run the merged company. And I was there. And so within 7 years, he took it from a company that was struggling to a company that had to be sold for parts. So in 2006, 2005, really, the company and the board announces, we're going to sell this company. Because that's the only way we can save shareholder value is by selling it and at least giving our shareholders something, because we're continuing a downward slide on EBITDA, which are profits on sales, etc. So we got Albertsons Inc. We had a chain of drugstores called Save-On, which we sold to CVS. By the way, that was the chain that O.P. Skaggs started, so we had another, Skaggs Brothers started another chain. Grocery stores, we had to figure out what to do with, the board, had to figure out what to do with them. There were 1,800 Albertsons stores approximately. So 1,800, two-thirds, 1,200 of these stores are really doing pretty well still. But they're being held back by one-third, about 600 stores that are losing a lot of money, that nobody's put any money into it for a long time. So the bad stores are Florida, Louisiana, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and Northern California. Those are bad. Southern California is doing great. Idaho and Utah and Washington and Oregon, they're doing really well. Jewel-Osco in the center of the country, the jewel of the company, really doing really well. There was Shaw's up in the Northeast, and there was Acme in the East Coast. They were doing okay. So those were great, but those 600 stores were losing well over $100 million a year in EBITDA. They had leaking roofs. They had cracked parking lots. They had broken fixtures in the stores. Their prices were too high. Their produce was lousy. And we had wonderful employees that couldn't get enough resources to run those stores, and so they were failing Nobody wanted them. So the board runs an auction basically in 2006, and they get a bid for $12.1 billion from a company out of Minnesota for these 1,200 really good stores, or really decent stores. So that's a lot of money. But they can't sell those until they find someone to buy the junk. And eventually they get a small consortium to buy the stuff. So you got your crown jewels and you got the ones no one wants. And this group right here decides that they are willing to put up a small amount of money, $300 million, which is a lot of money, but in comparison to what the good stuff sold for. But these are, so Claff Realty, Rupert Adler Real Estate, Kimco Realty. You notice a trend here. They're looking at these 650 stores that nobody wants, and they're saying, hey, those stores don't run real well, but they are in Northern California, in the Bay Area. They're in Dallas, Texas. They're in Phoenix, Arizona. They're in Florida. This is 2006. What is going on in the national and worldwide real estate in 2006? It is doubling. It is insane. It is growing faster than it is right now. You could buy something and sell it in a year for twice what you bought it for. That was 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007. It wasn't that way in 2008. But in 2006, these guys are looking at those junk stores and saying, hey, even if we can't turn around, they're worth a ton of money. Let's buy them. But they were not able to do that until they figure out how they're going to run them. Because if they buy them, SuperValue is buying the good stuff, but they've got a whole management team. They're a company. These are a bunch of investors. Who's going to run these things 650 till they can sell them? That's where a guy named Bob Miller comes in. So Bob Miller is started his career while he was in high school in Southern California in 1961 as a bottle sorter in the back room of an Albertsons store. And he will tell you that a bottle sorter is the person who just dreams of being promoted to being a courtesy clerk. That's what a bottle sorter is. You're in the back sorting his bottles. He still has a picture of the flannel shirt he wore after school for months and months. It could stand up when he was done because all that pop, that drips on you and everything else. This is how the guy started his career. He's going to high school, single mom, family. He'd had polio at the age, I think, of 7 or 8. He was in an iron lung. We don't have those now, but they had them then, and polio was a disease that killed people in the 30s, 40s, and 50s even, and 60s. It was still a very serious disease. He has a limp to this day because of that. He had a limp then, and he became a football player in his high school team, captain of the football team, working a part-time job, wanting to go to college. He had an indomitable will. He pushed himself to get things done, and it showed so much that as a high schooler he became a department manager. And coming up on graduation, they said, stay with us and you'll become a store director. So he figured he'd do that and maybe go back to college. He never did. He became a store director, became a district manager, he became a division president, and he moved on up from 61 through the 60s, 70s, and 80s. He's being promoted until in the 80s, Joe, and then Joe Albertson, CEO at the time, Warren McCain, make Bob Miller the Executive Vice President of Operations for all of Albertsons. 30-year career, he's the Executive VP of all operations nationwide, and a little chain, which we think of it now as a big chain, but at the time was a regional chain in the late 80s and early 90s, comes knocking on Bob Miller's door. Their name is Fred Meyer, you know him now. But then, you wouldn't have really known them, but they were owned by a group of private equity group, including a big private equity firm called KKR. And they were looking for somebody to try and turn their investment around. And they came knocking on his door and said, would you come be our CEO? Took him a while, but they negotiated a deal where he went to run them. Well, Bob's not good at just running a little chain. He's good at growing things. So over the next several years, he takes that little chain, gets it humming, sales and profits, and then starts acquiring and ends up buying Ralph's grocery stores in Southern California. Some of you have come from California and know of Ralph's. And Smith's in Utah, and Fry's in Arizona, and QFC in Washington, and Hughes Family Markets in Southern California, and others along the way, and builds the largest chain over the next 6 or 7 years of grocery stores on the western United States. And at that time, Kroger, who was one of the largest chains in the nation, has no presence on the West Coast, wants to get to the West Coast. The easiest way to do that is to acquire something. They call the board and Bob and say, we want to buy your company. They buy that company for the largest multiple ever paid, stock multiple, in the history of grocery retailing to this day. It was a huge deal. Bob becomes the chief operating officer of Kroger and the vice chairman of the board, and he kind of thinks, hey, I've had a great career. Had 2 great companies. I might be done. He's on boards. He's on Nordstrom's board at this point in time. He's on Harrah's entertainment board. He's doing a lot of really interesting things. Those private equity folks that had built, or he built for them the great success in Fred Meyer, they'd also, some of them had put a bunch of money into a company called Rite Aid. And Rite Aid had been the darling of Wall Street as a drugstore chain for 8 or 9 years because they were growing so fast, and their reporting to Wall Street was amazing. The reason they were reporting to Wall Street so well is because they were falsifying their books for several years, which made it really easy for them to look good until it caught up with them and their CEO went to prison and their COO went to prison and CFO got indicted and their head of HR got indicted, and it was a bad situation, and these investors watched their investment in Rite Aid, go through the floor, and they said, hey, you know that guy that worked all that magic? I wonder if he would come and save this company because it's going bankrupt in 9 months. So they called Bob, and eventually he says, I'll come because I trust you guys. He's a very loyal person. I'll go do it. I want to bring the people I believe in, and he brings several people with him. And he renegotiates the debt. They told him there was 9 months. He got there and he said there wasn't 9 months of cash left. There was 90 days of cash left before we went bankrupt. And he had to renegotiate all that debt. He said, I sold everything. I sold the paintings that were on the walls. I sold the helicopters. I sold everything they had in 90 days. And we got it straightened out. And in that first year, they actually went in the black, sales and profit. And their stock took off again. And he got them settled. And for the next few years, he CEO'd that company. And then he stepped back to chairman of the board. He put a woman by the name of Mary Sammons in as CEO. She'd come over with him. And he thought, okay, now I can kind of put my feet up. But unfortunately, some of these people, especially the Kimco folks, had been involved in those other deals, and now they're saying, who are we going to get to run these Albertson stores that nobody wants and nobody can run? Let's call Bob. So they call Bob. And Bob says, I don't want another job. And if it was anything other than Albertsons, I wouldn't take another job. If I can put a team together and I can trust them, and I think we can do this, I'll come back to you, we'll negotiate a deal, and I'll say yes. So he goes out to bring a team together, and he gets some amazing people, several of whom had retired out of Albertsons over the years early because they were unhappy with what had happened, and a couple of us that were still at Albertsons. So I get a call from Bob Miller, or from a person who wants me to have dinner with somebody at Hillcrest Country Club in May of 2006. And I don't know who it's going to be, but I trust the person who's inviting me. He said, I want to introduce you to someone. I go there, and the person that he introduces me to is Bob Miller. And Bob Miller's at a table in Hillcrest Country Club. We're going to have dinner, and he says, I'd like you to come work for me. I'm putting together a small team. I don't need to work anymore. I know, I've had a good career, and I wouldn't accept that. I believe that we can save tens of thousands of jobs. We can have a good time doing it if we do it right, and we might make a little money, but I won't promise that because these things are in such bad shape that we may be out of a job in 2 years. Now, SuperValu, the bottle of good stuff, had offered me and several of the others of us jobs as well. They were the sure bet. They were the right company to choose. They were publicly traded. They were making a lot of money. They had great stores. I should choose them. Hard decision, but the best decision I ever made in my life was calling Bob a week later and saying, I'll take your job. I'll join your management team. 8 of us. We started this little company. Very difficult for us to figure out how we're going to turn these stores around, but here's the amazing thing. There were great people in these stores, and Bob knew it. The reason that Bob knew it is because he'd run those divisions. He'd run Texas, he'd run Louisiana, he'd run Florida, he'd run Colorado. He knew these people. And he knew that if we gave them what they needed and got out of their way, they could turn this thing around. And so these stores that had been losing money forever and ever started to turn around rapidly. So for 7 years, from June 2006 to 2013, we had almost straight up run. Some of you remember in 08, 09, we had a little recession. At the same time, we had some deflation, and that was our little bump, but we had these stores that nobody thought could work, including we weren't sure at the beginning, became just phenomenal stores. So we bought 650 stores, and a chain up in Northern California came to us about 3 months into buying those 650 broken stores. 200 of those stores, or about 180 of them, were in Northern California. They were the worst stores we bought. We didn't know what we were going to do with them. This local Northern California chain comes to us and says, we want to buy those Northern California stores. We said, let us turn them around. Give us a year or two. They said, we want them now. We said, no. They came back to us, offered us a higher price, and a higher price, and a higher price. And eventually, through negotiation over several months, in March of 2007, so we started the company in June of 2006, March 2007, we sold those 180 or so Northern California stores. Remember what we bought the company for? $300 million? We sold those for $590 million. We doubled our investors' money. Over these 7 years, in fact, we returned $2.1 billion in profits to our investors on the $300 million investment. And those of us, the 8 of us that started the company, obviously owned a little bit of equity too, so it was good for everybody that was on this ride. Now, SuperValu bought the great stuff, so they should have, outdistanced us. So if we look at their sales over that same 7 years, that's what happened. They had 28 consecutive quarters of negative sales, not one positive quarter over 7 years. Good people, bad business strategy, bad execution, terrible results, and so they're heading for bankruptcy. In 2013, our board, our investors, and we get word that they're not going to make it. And we are invited to go meet with them in Minneapolis for some secret talks, and we spend about 3 months with them back and forth, and eventually arrive at a price to buy back those stores. We can't buy the whole company, which they wanted to sell us because it was in such bad shape we couldn't finance it, but we could finance buying back the Albertsons stuff that they bought, the good stuff, for $3.3 billion. Remember what they bought it for? $12.1 billion. 7 years later, we buy it back for $3.3. So we got a discount, but we still had to turn them around. And we knew that there was a lot of turning around to do, so we told our investors, give us a year or two. Actually, our first full quarter that we bought them back, we went positive in sales. And over the next 3 years, we went 8% sales increase, 10%, and then 12. So 8, 10, and 12 each year. And we're stacking on the year before, so that's really amazing, but we let our people go do what they needed to do, and they grew these sales like crazy. And we just got out of their way, gave them some support, they grew the sales. So that was our 3 years after we bought those SuperValu stores back. In fact, part of what SuperValu owned was Idaho. So for those first 7 years, from 2006 to 2013, our headquarters was here, and we didn't own the Idaho stores. We just watched them, and we suffered watching them. And our neighbors would say, why don't you do this? And we'd say, because we don't own them. And, but you work for Albertsons. Not that Albertsons. Well, what does that mean? And so my mom didn't understand it. I couldn't explain to anybody. So the best way to solve that was to buy them back. So we bought them back. Now we could put money into them. We can do things like we did with Broadway and Meridian and some other places with them. So our sales here in Idaho, by the way, since we bought them back in 2013, have been the strongest sales, and it's one of our smallest markets, but our strongest sales in the company, and still remains that way. We have had a phenomenal experience here, but we had great sales, and we did so well. The first 7 years, our investors loved us because we gave them $2+ billion and grew our sales. The next 3 years, they loved us because we grew sales on stuff that nobody else could seem to turn around. So they said, hey, would you go talk to Safeway, because we've been talking quietly with a bunch of their investors, and they flatlined their sales. They're struggling to turn that company north. Great company, having a lot of trouble for half a decade. We think they might be a good acquisition target. Full circle. Joe Albertson starts working for Safeway out of College of Idaho in the 1930s. In 2015, we have the chance to buy and put all of those brothers' companies together again. And so we go and meet with them, quietly talk with Safeway and their board, and eventually agree to buy 100% of their stock, because they were a publicly traded company. We've been privately traded. Some of you saw that question at the beginning. Since the inception of our company in June of 2006 as Albertsons LLC. Now we're Albertsons Companies, Inc., but Albertsons, we've been private the whole time. They were public, so we had to tender to buy all the stock from every one of their shareholders, and we did it. We bought 100% of their stock, took them private, so Safeway went private as part of our company, and we kept their names. So in a lot of our markets now, we have an Albertsons, and in the same town, we have a Safeway or a Vons, or a Randall's, or a Tom Thumb, or a Cars in Alaska, or whatever the local name was, and then an Albertsons. Main reason for that is you don't, if your customer has loyalty to a name, changing it, and we found this out when Albertsons did the American Stores deal, because Albertsons killed the Lucky Store name in California, so they could have one single name in California, Albertsons. Well, you lost all your Lucky customers. We weren't going to do that again, so we kept all the names. And so we operate across the street. And the benefit, one of the benefits of that is that if you get a customer that walks into an Albertsons in Washington and somebody treats them, the checker doesn't treat them right, and they're angry, they say, I'll show you, I'm going to go shop at Safeway. So we now own, so now we've got Safeway together, and we did a number of other deals along the way, but now we've grown from a little chain to the second largest chain in the United States. So you look, this was really, really, really hard. Harder than you would imagine to grow this fast. Anyone who's grown businesses quickly, and there's a number of people in this room that have, and have done it fabulously and understand this. But to start with, in 2012, and 3 years later, go from 192 stores to 2,200, to go from 20,000 employees to 250,000, to go from $4 billion to $59 billion in 3.5 years. Massive lift, integration, culturally, financially, and we took on a bunch of debt in doing it. What I didn't tell you is that in that 7 years, from 2006 to 2013, we actually paid off 100% of our debt. We were the only chain that I could find in the United States, grocery chain, that was debt-free. We didn't stay that way long, because then we did SuperValu, and then we did Safeway, and now we've got $12 billion in debt. So then we went to work on that debt on day one, that $12 billion that we had at the end of the Safeway acquisition, and today we're at $8 billion and dropping, which means that we're actually at about a 3 times our EBITDA, our profits per annum, to our debt, which is an investment-grade debt, and we're going down. So we take one step at a time, and we've driven sales growth, debt down, profit, integrated our computer systems throughout the whole company, integrated our people, a huge, huge job. And the way we did it was we applied a series of principles that have driven us from day one, and every time we grow them, we drive them, and I don't have time to go through them all, but one that we did that was very important for us is we decentralized all of our decisions, which means that we have 14 divisions today, and each one of those divisions operates like its own little company. And they each have, multi-billions in sales, so they're a big company. But they decide what to sell. We're not at Boise, Idaho telling everybody in Texas and in California and in New Jersey, all of our store directors, what they're going to sell. We let those divisions make those decisions. Well, while they're doing that, we get to stay here and figure out benefits and financial systems and IT systems and do all that work to support them while they take care of the customer. We couldn't have done it if we didn't run it. And the genius that came up with that model is a guy named Bob Miller. And from day one, he said, we're running these as divisions, not as a centralized company. In fact, the year one, when we finished acquiring these stores, we finished our first year. No one thought we'd be around. Albertsons LLC in 2006. Bob hired a bunch of us, and most of us had worked for Albertsons. Several had retired, and we got them come back in the 1990s. And so Super Value, who thought we were kind of funny at the beginning because they got the good stuff and we got the bad stuff, some of them were calling Albertsons LLC. They called us Albertsons late last century because we're from the old times. But we were able to drive our decentralized model because Bob Miller said, at the end of year one, I said, I want to do a newsletter to all of our stores from you. Congratulations on our first year. Talk about accomplishments. And Bob looked me in the eye and he said, we're not doing that. So why not, Bob? He said, because I don't want to be the voice and the face of this company. I want my division presidents to. So do 8 division newsletters. Each one of those presidents will talk about their accomplishments. That's how we're going to run the company. I didn't understand it. It took me a while to really get the genius of it. But that's how we were able to run this company. I didn't know we were going to grow to 2,270 stores. But Bob might have. What does Joe's company look like today? Today, 121 metropolitan areas, 33 million customers going through our stores every week, 2260 stores, 270,000. In the summer, we have 280,000 employees. We've got pharmacies, coffee shops. We're the second largest grocery chain in the United States. $61 billion in the last 12 months in sales. We'll probably be above that, or we will be above that this year. But these are our last 12 months. $2.8 billion in our EBITDA. I mean, we have had. We're a real company, and we got a lot of stuff in the works yet to come. Very exciting. Blue sky is ahead of us. So that's what's happened to Joe Albertson's company. And along the way, we did some other, I told you about the big ones, but we were still buying other companies. United Supermarkets in Texas, they own Market Street. Broadway store, we wouldn't have the Broadway store if we hadn't bought United Supermarkets, which is a terrific chain, because their Market Street is what we use for the model for our Broadway store right here. We bought El Rancho down in Texas, and we own a portion of that company, and they're teaching us how to become a better Latino marketer in the markets where that absolutely is a key to winning. So we've been able to find great companies and bring their thought processes into the company, merge them in, and use these smart people to keep us moving forward. But the most important thing, and you'll hear this from people that have been doing this for 40 years, like me, and you'll think, oh, that's just what they say because they had to have their career, now they can sit back and say that it's all about the people. But everybody here who has run a company, run a big division of a company, run a small department, run anything, will tell you that that's not just talk. That is the real story. It's about the people, and it's about the people you work with. And we've got a little video here that I'll tell you a little bit about some of our people.
On the average day, the average person comes in contact with countless other average persons. But how many actually affect us?
Very few. Very few.
Then the average person walks into the Albertsons on Vista Avenue.
Hello.
And runs right into Peter Steffens. For Peter,
Good to see you again.
every day is a conveyor belt of kind comments
That sounds good. Good luck. I hope you did well, man.
and constant chuckles and crack-ups.
I work in a mostly Jewish neighborhood, and I work at a kosher store where we deal with different kosher needs, such as kosher meats and also kosher fish. It's been a great experience working there. I love what I do. I have exciting customers that come in that makes my day, and it's been a great part of my life throughout my years of working for Jewel. And the really fun thing about that, I really take interest in when a younger person wants to know, how did my grandma do it? And they'll come in the store and they'll say, Forrest, you knew my mom. Can you tell me how did she do her gefilte fish? I want to get that same taste that I got when I was a little girl. And you know what? That touches my heart. This is what Jewel is all about. Service. Second to none.
Chris got a new trailer last night.
Seth is autistic, and he absolutely positively adores trucks, specifically Safeway trucks.
I want to be a Safeway truck driver when I grow up.
Really?
Yeah.
He studies a map of all the Safeway stores in the region.
Auburn's 531.
He memorizes the numbers of each store and every delivery truck.
He likes it watching you unload so that he can sit here and hang out with you.
Yeah, and I get to hang out with him, and if it puts me behind at night, I don't care.
It means so much to our son. He's taken the time to be part of this young man's life.
In a positive way.
Yeah. So, sorry.
Entire neighborhoods like this burned to the ground.
The house is gone. I haven't seen it. I saw my next door neighbor's picture. Our whole street's gone.
Bob Boyett says he lost everything, but that's not stopping him and many others from helping. He's opened up his grocery stores to feed firefighters and first responders.
It's our job to take care of our community and do what we can, and we got all the stores open. This is my family. These are my people here.
Some days you just catch people on good days and they're generally happy, but they're not Pete happy.
I just put a smile on and keep going because, somebody's going to want that smile. Somebody's going to need it. Yeah, I remember that guy, and he's such a cool dude.
So Bob Miller recruited me by saying, I want to save tens of thousands of jobs and I want some people that want to come along with me on that. SuperValue offered me stock options and an office and a regular corporate position. But Bob talked about people and a mission and all of that. And today, it's not tens of thousands, but 280,000 people who have kids in school, in colleges, that they're paying tuition and they're able to do that, and parents that they're taking care of, and they're able to be, the soccer coach, or they're able to volunteer in their communities, and they're able to put away a retirement. And they're able to do that working together, all of us. 280,000 people who don't know each other but get up every day together and build the same company, even though they'll never meet each other, working to the same purpose. And that means a whole lot more than just how many stores you have, what your last 12 months of EBITDA was, what your margins are. And margins are terrible in the grocery business, by the way, but volume makes up for it. But those things, the people, are what really matters. And it's not just, it's really the people out in the stores that matter to us a lot. We talk about them all the time. It's also the people that you go through the journey with right next to you in the foxhole. And on our 10th anniversary, we have our own little 10th anniversary cake in 2006, we started the company. We didn't know if we'd be around. 4 of us here are from the original, and then the rest we brought up over the years. And so of the 8 of us that started the company, 7 of us have retired, and only 1 is still working, and that's me. So for 3 more weeks, and then I will retire, and we'll leave it to this next great group. We all have ownership, those 8 of us in this company, so we care what's happening and what happens in the future with the company. But it's been an amazing experience to work with people that have a great vision, that care about people, that take care of people, that take care of finances, that are incredibly honest, that won't lie or mislead anybody. So I'm grateful for those people. And then the most important people in my life, and most important in any one of ours, are then your own family. And for me, that's been the greatest strength that I'll ever have. And so I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful to be able to talk with all of you, and we'll tell you that someday you'll have the story to tell, whatever your journey is. But if you base it on principles of taking care of people, being honest, and doing hard work, and getting to know other people, know what their value is, sharing with them, building your network of people inside and outside your companies, the opportunities are going to be amazing, and you're going to have a chance to have a fun, enjoyable career. So we have, I think, probably 15 or 17 minutes to answer questions or talk in any way that you want to.
All right. Well, Andy, I'm going to turn to our faculty and have them start off with the first question.
Andy, thank you for being here. First, I guess my question will start kind of about the people here. We got some amazing students, intelligent, bright, hardworking. Could you share with them maybe some things about you personally that you feel helped to get you to where you are today? And then sort of a second to that, some advice you might give them as they're starting their careers.
Let me give you a quick background. So I grew up in a family that didn't have much money. I was the first one to go to college. My parents actually went to college after I did, which I'm incredibly proud of them of having done. But I didn't have role models. I'd never met a lawyer or a doctor. I didn't know any of that stuff. But the one thing I learned is that, I knew really smart people that are smarter than me. I knew talented people, better looking people, all of that. But I was really good at not giving up. I ran cross country in high school. If any of you ran cross country, you know that the football players get all the fans and all the noise and all the adoration, and nobody comes to the cross country meet. So if you don't have the drive inside of you, you don't finish the 3-mile race. So I learned how to keep going when I wanted to quit, and I found out that there's nothing that was more important to me than doing that. Even at Albertsons, there were people who I know are more talented than me who just didn't stay around long enough to grow their career and get the opportunities that I had. So that's number one. Woody Allen said 90% of success is just showing up. And, Winston Churchill said, success is simply moving from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. You keep going. A second one, and, I went, when I first got recruited at Albertsons, my very first year, 1993, my company, Albertsons, sent me to Sun Valley for a week to a mini MBA course put on by Boise State University. And there was a guy that came there from General Motors, who was their head of HR, and he gave us a speech, and it's one of only 2 or 3 things I remember from that week specifically. I hope I learned a lot more, but 3 things. One of those was that he said, we spent a year doing an intensive study. General Motors back in the 80s and 90s was the company, the most valuable company in the world. And we studied our people to figure out what was the common link to their success, to the most successful people in the company. The one thing that linked them all, not IQ, not degree, not which area of the company they came from, none of that stuff. It was their social network. And in fact, since then, there have been numerous peer-reviewed studies showing that your social network, inside and outside your company, is the most important asset you'll have in your career. So make sure that you don't just sit in your cube or in your desk and just focus on what you do and tell everybody to get out of your way, because you're going to be the best just at what you do. You got to be great at what you do. But if you don't get outside and find out what somebody else knows, then you don't know who to call and pick up the phone when you've got a problem that they can help you solve, and they don't know to call you. And so Bob Miller called me, or the person who introduced me to Bob Miller, even more importantly, was a person in our finance department. He actually called me yesterday because he's in Sun Valley, but he knew I was giving this speech and said hi to me. And a couple of people here know him well. And he, at the time, had a reputation in Albertsons for being grumpy. And so when anyone had to deliver bad news, he was in our finance department. From our department, I got elected. So I'd go down and meet with him, tell him bad news. And we ended up talking about everything from buying real estate to politics or whatever else. And I found out he was a fantastic individual in the finance department of the company. He left Albertsons during the time that we had that not very great CEO because he didn't want to be around. But when Bob Miller went to find a CFO, he tapped that person, and then Bob Miller said, who should we get to run this other part of the company? And that person said, you ought to talk to Andy Scoggin. Well, if I had stayed in my room, in my office, or not wanted to go down there and deliver the bad news and then build that friendship and relationship, I would not have had my chance to join Albertsons, and on and on. And all of you are going to find out that those are critical. And outside of your business, outside of your home, outside of your comfort zone, meet people, know them, and spend time learning about them. People are fascinating, and at some point in time, some of those are going to come back to benefit you. You don't do it because it benefits you, but it will. And it also just makes life so much more interesting. So don't give up, and meet as many people and learn about them as you can. Those 2 things are incredibly important. And learn accounting, because accounting is really important. Accounting.
absolutely love your emphasis on people, because business is driven by people and business problems are people problems. Yeah. This gets to a multi-layered question, and it relates to the focus on people. Post-acquisition integration of a successful company out there requires a different skill set from turning around a company that's not doing well. Can you talk about the differences and the overlaps?
So turning around or acquiring a really good company that's running well versus turning around a company, you're absolutely right. Dramatically different approaches. So one of the things, I'll go back to Bob Miller, because he was the architect of so much that we did. When we would buy a good company like that Texas company I talked about, United Supermarkets in Market Street, Bob pulled all of us into a room before we signed on the dotted line to spend $500 million buying them, and he looked at every one of us on the management team, and he said, I want every one of your commitment that you will stay away from these guys for 6 months. I don't want you in their stores. I don't want you in their offices. I want you to leave them alone. And then we'll go down, because we've got to prove to them that what they're doing we value and we trust them, and we're bringing them into this company because we want to learn from them and we want to give them what they don't have, which is more capital and more ability to go do what they're doing better than we're doing. That's what we did with a great company. When we went into a tough company that was doing having a difficult time, Superbad was a good example. First thing we did with them is said, what is it you don't have that you need? And from there, we started to build sort of a set of toolbox resources for them to get them to where they go. But again, the message was, we believe that you know your business. We believe you know your customers. We're not coming in here to tell you what you're doing wrong. We're coming in here to find out what you think is the problem that's causing you to struggle. So the message in both cases was, we didn't acquire you because we thought you were a lousy business option, but we're really smart and we know how to do this, and we're just going to force our method down your throat. Instead it was, in one case, get out of their way because they're doing a great job, but give them capital and give them, and in both cases, the one thing we always do is we say, oh, by the way, at the end of the quarter, we expect you to make this much profit, and here's your sales. And that's your report card. How you do it, you're going to have to come up with. You're a leader. We expect you to do it. You're not a glorified clerk. We're not going to give you directions on what to do from the morning you get up till in the morning till you leave the office in the end of the day, or the store, or the business. We're going to expect you to know how to do it. And your report card is, at the end of the quarter, did you get the sales? At the end of the quarter, did you get the earnings? And if you didn't, you're going to have to explain why. And if your explanation's not good, then someone else is really anxious to step into your role. So like most business, and we gave people lots and lots of room if they were doing a tremendous job at effort, and results weren't following yet, but we knew what they were doing. But the main thing that we did in both cases was said, what do you need and how do we fix it, or how do we provide it? And in good companies, it's usually capital. In difficult companies, it's usually people, systems, metrics, all of the stuff that was going wrong, and most importantly, autonomy. Decentralize, let people closest to the customer make a whole lot more of the decisions. In our world, it's the 4 Ps. Some of you have marketing, price, promotion, placement, and product. Those 4 things in a store. What's the price? What's the product you put on the shelf? Where you're putting it in the shelf or in the store? The placement and promotion. What are your sales and buy one get one free? We don't want to make those decisions from Boise. We want you to make them in your store, in your division, in your neighborhood, because you're going to be a whole lot smarter at it than we are.
Very good. All right, we've got some microphones so that we can rotate in the audience. If you have a question, we'll get a microphone to you.
Great, and we're honored
to comment or something that you think I should know or anything else.
Thank you, and we're honored to have visitors from the business community, campus community, and of course our students. So you don't know this, but this is the blue side of the room. Let's start with a question from the blue side.
Okay. I'm really impressed by just retail market in general, groceries and all that. And I'm actually a senior, I wanted in here, and I'm working on a project about how to better penetrate markets. And I know that isn't exactly what you talked about here, but I really wanted to hear your take on how best a company of a large scale would penetrate a market.
We penetrate a new market? So one of the things that we haven't tried to do, so I'm probably not your expert, is launch into a new market. So what I believe I've learned along the way in business is that there's really three kinds of business people. There are entrepreneurs. These are people that are amazing. Joe Albertson, a good example of it. Several people in this room that are willing to get up and bang their head against a brick wall every day, day in and day out, penetrating new markets, getting their message out because they believe in their product, they believe in themselves, and they know that if everybody knew about this thing, they couldn't hold themselves back from doing it, but nobody knows about it, and nobody at the beginning has any trust or faith in them usually. They have to prove it. That's the entrepreneur. Then you get these people who I think are built to be steady state managers. So that entrepreneur builds $1 billion+ business, and then you put in these managers and they just kind of grow it, 1% per year, 2%, whatever they're doing. And they're really good at that, but if you try to make them an entrepreneur, penetrating new markets, changing things, they would drop out in 3 months because they want the business and the system already there. They like to improve incrementally little things here or there. And then there are turnaround business people, and they're the ones that like to take something that was incredibly well built but has been neglected, forgotten, and they see the value still in it, and they're willing to go back and rebuild it. And that's what we were. So we always took things that were already there that nobody else, thought had any value anymore, and said we see the value because they got great people, they've got great names, they got great products. They don't have enough capital and support to make them go, and let's get them going. So I wish I could tell you how to penetrate a brand new market. One thing we've never tried to do, and I think it's really, really hard. But there's people in this room that have done it, and if they want to raise their hands and tell you how to do it, I'd love to learn it from them.
Thank you, Andy. We now have a question from the orange side of the room.
I'm Kenny Stark. I wanted to know, everything I read about what put Boise on the world's map was when HP came to Boise in the 70s, and when those energies really synergized with Simplot and drove a lot of innovations. So did the grocery industry and especially Albertsons synergize at all with all the exciting stuff that was going on around here during that time?
Great question. So I came in '93, but I've had the benefit, and I love history, especially the history of the business community in Boise and in Idaho. And what's amazing is and again, you've got people here that in the back area that know this, going back many years more than me. But there was an incredible synergy, not just in business, right? So Joe Albertson knew J.R. Simplot, and they knew, Morrison, Harry Morrison, and all of those people. It was a small community. You couldn't not know these people that were changing the world, by the way, out of little Boise, Idaho. But it wasn't just that. They also were the ones who were, putting money into the children's home. They were putting money into the hospitals. They were putting money into, and not just money, but adding their name and their stature to the things that create a community outside of just their business. And so you see what they were doing, and Joe was very much enmeshed with so many of these other early pioneers that some of them, their businesses have since been bought, and you wouldn't know their name now, but people knew them in the 50s and 60s and 70s here in Idaho. They all gave a portion of everything that they were doing to grow the broader community as well. St. Luke's, St. Al's, these businesses would not, hospitals who now are saving lives, wouldn't be doing what they were doing if those pioneers weren't then turning around and saying, okay, I will help with this and I'll help with that. And a lot of times, and this is a mark of a lot of great builders of business and entrepreneurs, is, and I'll do it in one condition, I don't want my name attached. I don't want people thinking, oh, isn't he great because he did this? It's, I want that to happen. And over again, as I find stories that go way back and back and back on these builders of the community here, they didn't attach their names to a lot of what they did unless they had to get other people to join on board. And they were pretty good at twisting arms when they wanted other people to get on board on something they thought was important for the city of Boise.
Christian Perry. With Amazon's Whole Food moving towards and testing cashierless checkouts, do you believe that this is a threat towards the way retail markets are working right now? And does Albertsons plan to adopt strategies like this? I know you're talking about autonomy and all that, and I said that goes hand in hand with it.
Yeah, so anyone been in an Amazon Go store ever? We got 3 people, 4 people, 5 people. Okay, 5 people. What's it like? Yeah.
I don't know, it's different. It's very...
Was there a lot of produce and a lot of products in the store? Or is it like a grocery store? No. Pretty limited. Yeah, 3 things deep on an aisle. It's a very difficult technology. Amazon's brilliant, but you're not going to go there to do your week's worth of grocery shopping. You're going to go there to grab a quick thing on your way home if you need a quick meal. So it's based on incredible artificial intelligence and sensors, and I think your question is broader than just that one technology, but I wouldn't call it a threat to the retail grocery industry. I'll call it the next generation of what everybody's looking at. So we've been talking to companies most out of Europe and Asia that have those kind of products for the last 5 years before Amazon launched that, those couple stores, because we know that people want that in some fashion. But to be able to put that, Whole Foods can't do it, we can't do it, into a 40 or 50 or 60,000 square foot store with 40,000, 45,000 SKUs. So SKU is one type of product, 45,000 SKUs. Today that doesn't exist. Will that exist when you have kids or they have kids? Absolutely. But there's a lot of other things that are amazing that we have to keep up with as well. And one of the ones I love is automation. Automation in the back room of a store, automation in a warehouse. So we just spent $100 million down in Arizona automating our warehouse, where all of the product for the last 30 years has been picked by workers that go around and pull it off of these big, huge racks and put them onto pallets and wrap them and then send them to a store. Now we've got robots that are going around and pulling all of that stuff off. And the thing that was so cool to me, one of the first things that never occurred to me, is we're in there and the people that were demonstrating this to us and the management team said, hey, this is really cool, 1 million square foot warehouse. Oh, let us just do this. And they switched off all the lights in the warehouse. Couldn't see a thing. Guess who kept working? The robots. They kept picking. If it gets 98 degrees or it gets 102 degrees because you're trying to work on the air conditioning, we have to give our workers time off. You don't have to give your robots time off while you get that up and running. They keep working. They work all day and all night. What we have been able to do is take people that have been working for us for 20 years pulling stuff and sent them back to school. They've now learned how to work the software and how to run those things. And so now they're running big sections instead of lifting heavy objects. And so automation there is on its way. And in many, many other areas, of course, people are ordering more food at home, and people are picking up stuff at stores, and et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, if you don't stay up in this business like in any business and stay ahead of it and spend $1.5 billion every year on technology, which is what we're spending, you'll be irrelevant in 3 to 5 years.
Very good. Well, Dean Bannister.
So, Andy, I'd like to thank you today for speaking and thank our audience for coming. It will show your appreciation.